Kia ora katoa, nau mai, haere mai, and welcome. I'm Alison Brown, collator and publisher. With this video, we celebrate the publication of the 5th book in the series Rotorua Retro. The video replaces what would have been a gathering of the contributors to launch Rotorua RETROfive, but the uncertainties surrounding COVID-19 meant that we had to cancel the gathering. For over a decade, the Rotorua Retro project has been collecting and publishing the early memories of people who live or have lived in and around Rotorua. The drive was initiated by Ines Fraser, aged 90 at the start, who was motivated to rescue early memories before they faded and died. Her enthusiasm and support inspired each one of the Rotorua books. Despite her death earlier this year at the age of 103, Ines's inspiration was as strong as ever throughout RETROfive. Her very name encouraged participation. An important aspect of a book launch is to acknowledge those who've had a part in its publication. There's a page listing our thanks at the back of the book, but there are still organisations and people that deserve an extra mention. Our authors are always our guests of honour, along with those who help them and help me. Several individuals are singled out in that list, as is the Rotorua Civic Arts Trust for their funding assistance. Since publication, however, the Rotorua Library team at Te Aka Mauri have gone way beyond generous in creating this video, which will be posted on social media platforms for all to see. Our special thanks go to Joanne Dillon, Marketing, Communications and Events Lead, who has pulled this project together, and to Graeme Cash, Heritage and Research Specialist, for his filming expertise, his talent and his patience. And to those thanks, I add my appreciation to Anne Brimmer for her invaluable help in filming many of the readings that follow. Her assistance has meant the less tech-savvy, like myself, have been able to contribute. And finally, our local bookshop, McLeods Booksellers, have again demonstrated their support for the Retro project. All these books are prominently featured in McLeods. I'd now like to introduce Laura Marshall, Te Aka Mauri Director, and to thank her for her support. Following her words, we'll see and hear some contributors as they read extracts from their stories, and we'll also hear from our newly appointed Heritage and Research Lead, Abigail Wharne, to whom I also add my thanks. Enjoy these readings, be awed by the generosity of the readers, and remember there are lots more memories in RETROfive just waiting to be read.
Tēnā koutou, Laura Marshall, Library Director. Recording memories. Why is it important? Memories provide a connection between the past and the present for our community. They teach those that come after us in a real and meaningful way. They make history come alive. And collecting memories also shows respect for the past and that we value those experiences. Resources like this wonderful book also help with supporting our community by sharing memories. Local memories can help dementia sufferers reconnect, and we hope this book will not only sit in our regular collection but will also contribute to our dementia collections. Recording memories can benefit seniors with cognitive impairment. Reading local memories can help reignite emotion and also reignite conversations. However, it's not just a tool of support but also one of enjoyment. Shared memories and experiences can give comfort, warmth and a feeling of belonging, even to those groups that are unconnected with the community. Memories are a magical thing and important to document, often not always appreciated until the person sharing the memory is gone. Shared memories can also help maintain cultural connectiveness or help to build a cultural identity and a sense of belonging. Shared memories are so relevant to this community that we've developed a dedicated standalone biography section, and it's proving very popular. Personal narratives, especially about ordinary people, are very popular with our patrons and a regular feature on our staff picks, and I'm hoping this book will contribute to that fantastically.
Kia ora whānau, my name is Rose Lovell. I am from Tuharangi and Tūhoe descent. My maiden name is Hunt, and I am one of only a handful of my generation left. We are the grandchildren of one of the most influential women who guided at Rotorua in the early 1900s. My story in the latest Rotorua Retro number 5, entitled My Grandmother, God Susan, Huhana Whakarewa, talks of those early days. My grandmother was of East Coast descent, born around 1860, before the land wars. My grandfather, a seafarer, was born in 1859. His mother, Tūparahaki, was of Te Arawa descent. Huhana and Thomas married in early 1890s, and shifted to Rotorua, my grandfather's ancestral home, settling at Whakarewa about 1902, where they ran the village store. Huhana and her eldest daughter Kathleen started guiding through the thermal reserve and quickly became well known. Their command of English, their knowledge of the geothermal field, and stories, and Susan's humour making them popular with the tourists. In 1910, the government introduced registration for guides, in an attempt to control the industry. Huhana and Kathleen were among the earliest to be registered. Nanny had 10 children, including 2 sets of twins, my father, born in 1895, being one of them. 4 of my aunts became guides, as well as Kathleen. There was Edith, or Editana, Ellen, who became the longest-serving guide at Waka, and Tina, who starred in the full-length silent black and white feature movie in 1927 called The Te Kooti Trail. In 1921, Nanny mentored and introduced Rangatiaria Dennett to guiding. Guide Rangi went on to become the most famous guide of modern times. Guide to the world's rich and famous, including royalty. As well as being a guide, Nanny was a midwife at Whakarewa. She had to cease practicing when the government imposed the Pākehā health system and provided a public health nurse to undertake that role. Nanny carried on guiding until after World War II and died in 1951, aged 90 years. I was 5 years old when she passed away. Although she had lived among her adopted people for 50 years, as an outsider she could not be buried with her husband in the Urapa at Whakarewa. She lies in Sala Street Cemetery. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora, ko Hikaru Morgan tōku ingoa. My name is Hikaru Morgan. I am reading from my great-grandfather's story, which he wrote at the beginning of last year. He passed away in April 2021. Growing up in Napuna by Harold Hunt. Kia ora, my name is Harold Hunt. I was born in Napuna on October 11th, 1945. To my parents William Kiripātia and Katarina Te Rongoi Te Rupe Hunt. I am the second youngest of a whānau of 13. Ko tarawera te maunga, ko tarawera te awa, ko te arawa te waka, ko te arawa te iwi, ko tūhaurangi me ngā tipikiau, ngā hapu, ko hine mihi tōku marae, ko hine wai tōku wharekai.
Kia ora whānau, I'm Natalie. I'm Harold Hunt's eldest grandchild. Growing up in Ngāpuna was a struggle financially. We did not have a lot of money, but we survived. We lived in the modest little home where we shared a bed with 2, sometimes 3 others. Beds were a luxury, and most of the time we slept on the floor. Growing up in Ngāpuna was truly amazing. As we were all related, we were a closely knit little community who lived in and out of each other's homes and shared almost everything we got. I was educated at Whakarewa Primary School, where I received the best education possible. I spent all of my time in the Whakarewa village, so it was inevitable that I would become a local penny diver. Penny diving has been a tradition for over 100 years. Earning money from the river enabled us to go to the movies, buy fish and chips, or just go to town. Today, my 7-year-old great-granddaughter Ahikaroa is carrying on the tradition. Overseas visitors who came in droves were the main contributors to us making money. When there were no tourists on the bridge, it was an opportune time to rattle. The term rattle was used when the penny divers dug a hole in the sand with their foot, dived down and scooped both hands full of sand before resurfacing. They would then sieve the sand through their fingers hoping to find coins. Kia ora.
Hello, I'm Maureen OReilly. I'm reading an excerpt from the chapter I've been lucky enough to contribute to the latest Rotorua RETROfive series, which is about to be published. I'm talking about coming across from Hamilton on the train to be met at the railway station in Amaho Street and taken home by our auntie, who we'd come to have the holidays with. My auntie worked for Goodson's carriers that were situated in Pukuatua Street. It's about where the optometrists are, across the road from the back of the Grand Hotel. And she worked there full time. So she was supposed to look after us, but she sort of fitted us in around her full-time work and us being able to take care of ourselves quite a lot. And then on the weekends, it would be really good fun with her husband, would be home then. Audrey's house in Wiley Street was very old for the first few visits, but it was a company house and was soon replaced by a brand new Lockwood, one of the very first to be constructed. And so my memories of that house are all creaking and groaning as the wood settled in. It was a long way to walk from Wiley Street into town, so quite often we would just entertain ourselves nearby. And one of the ways we did that was playing in a long ditch that had like pumice on the edges and clay, and it had all the most wonderful colours along the inside the sides of the drain, and we called it Rainbow Ridge because the colours were so pretty. And it was right on the border of the airport where we could see the planes and occasionally be lucky enough to interact with the pilots. And there was this long row of gum trees there that you can see the remnants of at the Ridges Hotel. One of the highlights, though, for us staying at Audrey's one holidays was going with one of the loads loaded up on a big truck, and we were put in the care of the driver for the day. And we were standing up behind the cab on the boards that were there and holding on with our feet tucked in between the planks to get a better view over the cab. And on our way down to going south, we came across a big view of a Rainbow Mountain, and I couldn't believe my eyes because back then, 65 years ago, there was very little growth on it. It's all been cleared off. So the rainbow on that mountain was way better than the one in the ditch. And I just remember we're on the back of this truck with the sun on our faces and the wind in our hair and looking at one of the wonders of the world. Anyway, the truck got all the stuff unloaded on its way down to Taupo, and the final drop-off of the day was a big mines, great big circular mines, like global, I mean. Anyway, they were dropped off on the shores of the river as it exited Lake Taupo and became the Waikato River, heading on its long journey to the sea. We were very pleased to be able to get in the front of the truck for the journey back because it was cosy and warm, and I think we must have both gone to sleep because I don't remember much of the journey back home to Auntie's place. Thank you for listening. Bye. Hope you buy the book.
I'm Graeme Dennett. I'm reading from my story titled Matters in the Law, Rotorua in the 1960s. I arrived in Rotorua on May 11, 1964 to join Peter Duncan, a barrister and solicitor in sole practice. I joined as a staff solicitor and in April 1965 as a partner. My experience in the law in the 1960s was filled with interesting characters and their business. At this time we were plagued by the sulphur-ridden manual exchange in endeavouring to keep in contact with clients, real estate agents, insurance company personnel and the other solicitors involved in litigation and in property transactions. My first business function was an after-drinks occasion on the retirement of the manager of our New South Wales bank, located at the intersection controlled by Rotorua's only traffic lights, Hinamar and Tutanekai streets. At this function I enjoyed the company of the well-known former All Black Dr. Mark Irwin, new to Rotorua, who also did not know any of the other party attendees. I subsequently contested squash with him, the doctors Graeme Beale and Arthur Hackett, the Rotorua celebrities Laurie and Howard Morrison, and the former New Zealand wicket-keeper Eric Petrie, a fierce and unrelenting competitor, when we all joined the new Brownlee family squash centre as novices. My noteworthy claim in squash was my achieving a win against the world squash champion Bruce Brownlee in a locally organised tournament. He was then 11 years old. Our one client happy to wait on the narrow green stool was Bruce. Bruce had an issue with the Social Security Department. In general discussion, he confirmed that he and his wife had separated. He disclosed that he had been very upset and depressed at the time and decided to commit suicide. He was alone in the house in Te Aka Street, Kauha Point. He wired himself to the electricity but realised that he might be days or more before he was found. He rang the police confirming his intentions and then pulled the switches. The extent of the wiring blew out the fuses, leaving him unharmed. Bruce gave up his attempt and left the house. Driving down Kauha Point Road, he passed two police cars with sirens and lights flashing, racing up to Te Aka Street. Bruce had the awful quandary whether to go back and assist the police or to continue and possibly avoid the criminal charge of attempted suicide. He went back.
Kia ora, I'm Anne Brimmer, and I'd like to read some of my story about the ward baths. Nude bathing was a weekly routine on Sunday nights for many years of my childhood. After dinner, often with friends included, we piled into Dad's car for the trip to the ward baths in the government gardens, now the Polynesian Spa. The ward baths were opened in 1931 and were named for an early New Zealand Prime Minister, Sir Joseph Ward, who had a passion for thermal waters. Once we all trooped inside the foyer to the admissions payment counter, segregation of the sexes meant the females, often Mum, my sister Barbara, friend Joan and I, went to the right, and the males, Dad, my brother Peter, and sometimes Joan's brother Ralph, went left. The smooth, warm waters of the thermal swimming pool were a delight and a natural experience. We loved it. We could always tell people new to the experience, young and old, as they usually crouched, clasping their knees on the steps into the pool, or they faced the wall, holding on along the pool side until they gathered their courage and overcome their instilled modesty. We who had swum there from a young age swam freely without a thought. We were not bothered about what people looked like through the slightly opaque thermal waters, which drew a clouding veil over body parts. We weren't allowed to put our head under the water, after some amoebic meningitis deaths occurred associated with other natural thermal pools. It didn't stop us from enjoying the freedom from clothes and the warm, silky water against our skin. Kia kaha.
I'm Ursula Fra, and this is an extract from my contribution entitled A Musical Family Arrives, Summer, Rotorua, 1963. The Emmanuel family, John, Ursula, Susan and Errol, arrived in Rotorua on December the 27th, 1963, to find that New Zealand was on summer holiday and everything was closed. My first reaction on seeing older buildings with veranda was, my God, we've come to the Wild West. We were a musical family, and soon found Rotorua Operatic Society, the Carter Chorale, and the choir at St Luke's Church, which was then situated in Haupapa Street opposite what is now the City Library. The RSA was a lively organisation catering for the needs of men and women who had served in the armed forces during World War II. It seemed to draw mostly men, but there was a women's arm. As well as offering regular social gatherings such as dances, bar facilities and meals, the RSA also ran the Tin Hat Club, which once a year provided entertainment on Anzac Day. It was run by Ernie Leonard, who was the city's public relations officer. And this club presented a show of singing and dancing members of the RSA to lighten the mood of the day. There were some women in the company, and the rule was that only married women were allowed, usually wives of the men involved. With Ron Slow in charge of music, several years of hilarious shows were presented. In a way, the RSA was responsible for the Operatic Society. In 1944, Mrs. A. Crowther McDowell donated a lovely old hotel building to provide a residential club for returning service personnel for their rest and recreation. RSA President Mr. B. Gordon Edwards, looking for ways to fund the club, accepted the offer of Mr. Norman Day to produce a show on their behalf. The show, which was staged in August 1945, was a success, and the committee which ran it called a public meeting in September of that year with a view to forming a society to encourage interest in the performing arts. Over the years, the new society, now known as Rotorua Musical Theatre, has grown and prospered and has its own theatre home, Casablanca Theatre, situated in Reilly Street.
I'm Kathleen Lee, and it's a privilege to read my little story for you today. It's called The Land of the Long White Cloud. We arrived by ship in Auckland on 9th of March 1974. When we docked, we saw an employee from my husband's new company, Mills Tui Trailers, holding a large card with our names on it. It was a very hot day, and I wore my best summer dress, pearls, stockings, high heel shoes and white cotton gloves. Richard looked very smart in his best suit, shirt, tie and carefully polished shoes. Even our 5-year-old wore a shirt and tie. Nearly all the passengers disembarking from the ship were as formally dressed as we were. The locals, however, were wearing casual t-shirts, shorts and flip-flops. What had we come to? Even though New Zealand is an English-speaking country, everyone seemed to be talking a different language. What were people saying? Our thongs or flip-flops were jandals. Wellingtons were gumboots. Bathing costumes, togs. Your shout, you pay. A dual carriageway was a 2-lane highway. Fields were paddocks. Cookers were ovens. A kettle was a jug. And French doors were ranch sliders. Nothing was the same at home as home. The letterboxes were at the gate instead of built into front doors. The dustmen were called rubbish truck men. They came along the road, hanging on for dear life to the back of the truck. We used to know our dustmen quite well. Anyone would have to be very fit to get to know the Rotorua dustman. The milkman ran at such a fast pace, it was very hard to catch him to get more milk or cream. We were so ignorant about New Zealand life that we thought all Maori lived on pa's, and we expected to see them going around town in their costumes.
Kia ora koutou, ko Abi toku uniwa. I'm the Heritage and Research Lead, Kairai Rangahotanga at Te Aka Mauri. Much like the threads of reminiscence that run through Alison's series of books, my team's work is ingrained with people and memory. Our role is to share and preserve Rotorua stories to provide a connection between the past and present for our community. This aim is achieved through collecting local stories, preserving them, and making them accessible. Narratives come to us in many forms. They might be personal papers, research notes, or business records that become part of our archive. Or they can be published works, much like RETROfive, that end up on the shelves in the Don Stafford room. As information professionals, making information like this discoverable is our bread and butter. We work hard to share the stories in our care. We create descriptions of items that are published on the library's website and provide specialist knowledge so the community can connect with their whakapapa, family history and local stories. Sharing knowledge in this way can include talks, displays and content we share online. More often than not though, it is friendly conversations with customers at the help desk and replies to emails about a special auntie or a house someone grew up in. In a way, we are telling and retelling stories all the time. The next few years are an exciting time for my team as we look to new ways of connecting with our community. We want to ensure the memories we preserve and intend to share for generations to come reflect all corners of the place we call home. For this reason, we'll be implementing a digital platform so local individuals and groups can easily discover the stories in our care, as well as share their own. There'll also be a focus on lived history from the ground up, as we begin to capture and share oral accounts through an oral history project. Heritage professionals are experts in future-proofing. Preserving today what will be accessed and interpreted tomorrow is a huge responsibility. And for this reason, thinking 10, 20 or even 100 years ahead is key to our work. So, to conclude, and echo the blurb of the Retro series of books, ours is a project that will never end.